Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down a really powerful prayer from the Apostle Paul. Think of it as a blueprint for building an unbreakable community. And here's the twist. It's not about rules and regulations. It's about building from the inside out.
So right out of the gate, Paul kicks off chapter 4 not as some theologian in an ivory tower, but as a prisoner for his faith. By reminding them of his chains, he immediately raises the stakes. This isn't just some abstract idea he's writing about. He is literally suffering for this stuff, and that gives his message on unity some serious weight.
But, to really get why that plea in chapter 4 is so urgent, we actually have to back up a bit to the chapter right before it. There, Paul offered this profound prayer for the early church, a community that was really struggling to bring together two groups that were, for all intents and purposes, bitter rivals, Jews and Gentiles.
And that was the big mystery he was actually in prison for talking about. So when he prays, it's not just for, everyone to get along and have good feelings. No, he's asking for some serious supernatural strength. The kind of strength you'd need to make this completely radical, unprecedented new unity a real, everyday thing.
And this gets us to the absolute core of Paul's argument. He says this kind of unity, the kind that can actually change the world, it doesn't start with community programs or activities. Nope, it begins deep inside a person in what he calls the inner being.
And you can really see what he's getting at here. Paul isn't interested in a faith that's all for show, just external actions and public performance. He's praying for a real, genuine power, something supplied by God's Spirit that actually fills you up from the inside and gives you true resilience and strength.
Okay, so this idea of inner strength can feel a little abstract, right? So Paul does something brilliant. He uses two powerful metaphors that anyone back then would have instantly understood.
First up, he talks like a farmer. Imagine a community so deeply rooted in this rich soil, and that soil is love, that everyone in it can just flourish. They can grow strong together, pulling up all the nourishment they need to become everything they're meant to be.
Then he switches hats. Now he's talking like a builder, and he gives us this second metaphor. Love isn't just the dirt you grow in, it's the solid bedrock. It's the unshakable foundation that makes sure the whole community is structurally sound. So when the storms hit, and trust me they will, a community built on this foundation isn't going anywhere.
So this whole idea keeps building, and it leads to something truly cosmic. Paul prays for believers to be able to grasp this huge, multidimensional concept, and honestly, this is where we run into a fascinating little puzzle for scholars.
See, he asks that they would have the strength to understand the breadth and length and height and depth. But the breadth, length, height, and depth of what? The original Greek text just stops there. It doesn't actually name the thing he's talking about. And that has left translators and scholars scratching their heads for centuries.
All right, so there are a few really good theories out there. Could it be the power of God? Maybe. The mystery of salvation? That fits the context. His wisdom? Also possible. But while there's still some debate, most experts tend to lean toward one answer, mainly because of what comes next. They believe he's talking about the immeasurable, four-dimensional nature of Christ's love.
And why do they think that? Well, it's because of the very next phrase. Check this out. Paul prays for them to know a love that actually surpasses knowledge. Now, that's a paradox, isn't it? It tells us that this love is just so huge, so profound, that you can't just understand it with your brain. It's something you have to experience.
So to try and make this idea of an experiential love a little more real, the source author shares this beautiful personal story. He talks about being the dad who would stay up all night with his little kids when they were sick. And of course, the kids, they're asleep. They have no idea what he's doing for them, no clue about the love and sacrifice happening in that moment. But they were benefiting from it completely. And that, he says, is kind of a little snapshot of God's love for us.
After trying to put words to this incredible, indescribable love and power, it's almost like Paul just runs out of things to say. He's so completely overwhelmed by the sheer size of it all that his prayer just bursts into this spontaneous song of worship.
And in this doxology, this burst of praise, he reminds them that the God they serve isn't hemmed in by their problems, or even by what they can imagine. God's ability to act is way beyond their wildest dreams, beyond even their biggest, most desperate prayers. And here's the real kicker, the punchline to his whole prayer. This limitless, reality-bending power, it's not out there somewhere. It's not theoretical. Paul is crystal clear. It is the exact same power that is already at work inside every single one of them. It's like this internal resource just waiting to be tapped into.
So that brings us right back to where we started, to the final practical point of all this. All of this incredible inner power, this knowledge of a four-dimensional love, it has a very, very specific purpose for the community.
And this right here is a total game changer. Think about it. Paul doesn't ask them to go out and create unity. He tells them the unity already exists and their job is just to maintain it. That's a huge shift in perspective, right? Unity isn't some far-off goal you have to work to achieve. He's saying that in Christ, it's a present reality. Their job isn't to build it from the ground up, but to protect what they've already been given.
So, how? How do they maintain it? Well, Paul doesn't leave them hanging. He gives them a super clear, actionable list of virtues. And these aren't just, nice-to-have personality traits. This is the practical toolkit. This is the how-to guide for keeping the peace and unity of their community. And it's all fueled by that inner strength he was just praying for.
So in the end, what Paul's really saying is that a changed world starts with changed hearts. Hearts powered by a divine love that you can't even fully grasp with your mind. And this ancient blueprint, it leaves us with a pretty big question for today, doesn't it? If this is true, what's one small step we could take, right now, to use that inner power to maintain the unity we've already been given?